Most people would kill to have a magical being for a pet. The idea is usually relegated to fantasy books, movies, or TV shows. But what if you could adopt one in real life? Would it be cool or more trouble than it's worth? Recently, an anonymous Reddit user shared their experience with adopting a magical creature. And honestly, it might make you reconsider your stance. It was just another day at the Springfield Animal Shelter until something strange happened. The door to the basement opened, and an old woman came out carrying a basket. She went up to the front desk and told them she needed to return this before dusk. They didn't ask any questions, but they also didn't take the basket from her, so she left it there and hurried out the door. One of the workers took the basket down to the holding area. Since it wasn't a stray animal, they didn't know what to do with it, so they put it in a spare cage. When they opened the basket, they found a tiny dragon. It looked like a miniature version of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, except that it was breathing actual fire. People started coming in to adopt animals, but when they saw the dragon, they wanted nothing to do with it. It was too dangerous to keep in the shelter, so they called the local animal control. But when they arrived, all they did was look at the dragon and leave without saying a word. This kept happening. No one wanted the dragon, not even the city's fire department. Eventually, one of the workers went back to the holding room. They couldn't bear to leave the dragon alone anymore and wanted to give it some love before it went to its new home. But that's when things took a turn. As soon as the worker reached into the cage, the dragon latched onto their hand with its teeth. Then it bit them. The worker recoiled, and that's when they saw blood dripping from the dragon's mouth. It wasn't the kind of blood they were expecting. The dragon had sustained injuries at some point in its life. Its scales were missing, and its skin underneath was badly burned. One of the shelter workers brought a blanket over and gently wrapped it around the dragon. It snuggled into the warmth and fell asleep. And that's when the decision was made. None of them wanted to give up the dragon. They would take turns staying late and watching over it until they could find it a new home. Over time, they gave it food and water and watched it grow. It became friendly with the staff, but it never lost its mischievous side. It would often start small fires around the building just to mess with everyone, but everyone laughed it off. They were happy to have the dragon around, and they knew they wouldn't give up until they found it a good home. One day a man walked into the shelter. He said he was looking for a special kind of pet and was willing to take in a dragon. They immediately thought he was joking, but he insisted he was serious. So they showed him the dragon. It was much bigger now and looked very healthy, but it was also pretty destructive. At one point it accidentally set a pile of blankets on fire. But the man didn't seem to mind. He only had eyes for the dragon. After filling out some paperwork, he took the dragon outside. It ran around its new yard and breathed fire into the sky. Everyone at the shelter waved goodbye. They knew the man would take good care of the dragon. But here's where things get interesting. About a year later, the dragon showed up at the shelter again. It wasn't with the man who adopted it. Instead, it was with the old woman from the beginning of the story. It had apparently returned to her. She explained she had taken the dragon to live with her in a faraway land. But after a while it started causing too much destruction. The windows in their house were always getting burnt, not to mention all the times it almost set the house on fire. So she brought it back to the shelter. To say that everyone was surprised was an understatement. They asked the woman why she had given up the dragon, but she simply said she was old and couldn't handle it anymore. The dragon was big enough to cause serious damage, but it was still a child at heart. Once it started playing with the other animals, it caused hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. There was no way they could keep the dragon there, so they once again contacted the local authorities. They arrived and loaded the dragon onto a truck. It was going to be relocated to a zoo in another state. But when the staff members at the shelter went to clean out its cage, they found something incredible. The dragon had left behind a pile of treasure. It included jewelry, gold coins, and precious gems. They didn't know whether to be impressed or scared. At that point, they had no choice but to get rid of the dragon. It was far too powerful to keep around. The man who had adopted it years earlier showed up again. He said he would take the dragon away from the zoo and raise it himself. Apparently, he had plenty of space and could handle a powerful magical beast. The shelter workers agreed and hoped the dragon would finally find the home it deserved. So does this mean the dragon finally got the family it always wanted? Not quite. The man who adopted the dragon didn't want to raise it for fun. He planned to use it for his own selfish reasons. He wanted to become the most powerful wizard in the world, and he needed the dragon's help to get there. He chained the dragon up and forced it to do his bidding. But the dragon didn't want to participate. It missed the friends it had made at the animal shelter and didn't appreciate being used as a tool. The dragon tried to tell the man no by breathing fire, but he simply yelled at it and made it work harder. This went on for weeks until one of the shelter workers found out what was happening. They rushed over to the man's house and freed the dragon. They took it back to the shelter where it could roam free and do whatever it wanted. But this caused another problem. The man wasn't happy about losing his dragon. He vowed revenge on whoever had stolen it from him, so he put a curse on the shelter. Every single employee got sick and no one could take care of the animals. It was a disaster. But then something amazing happened. All of the animals at the shelter started glowing. Their eyes sparkled and their fur stood on end. They had all been affected by the dragon's magic, but only the dragon itself knew how to control it. It stepped forward and cured every single employee. Then it disappeared. It turned out the dragon had run away again, but this time it wasn't to escape its master. It had gone to seek out its true family. After a long journey, it found them. It was greeted as a hero because it had saved the lives of countless animals. Finally, the dragon was part of a loving family and could live a carefree life. Well, that's certainly one way for a feel-good story to end. But is it really that easy to adopt a magical creature? Not according to our next Reddit user. They also shared their experience with adopting a magical being, but theirs wasn't exactly friendly. This user said that they had rescued a pixie from their abusive home. Like the dragon in the previous story, the pixie had been abused for its magical abilities. And just like the dragon, it didn't want to be tamed. At first, the user thought they could befriend the pixie. But after a while, they realized they were dealing with a wild animal. Pixies are known for being incredibly unpredictable. They can turn violent without warning and will attack anyone who gets in their way. The user ended up with multiple injuries, including cuts, bruises, and even a black eye. They eventually had to give up and let the pixie go. It flew away and has never been seen since. Well, that's certainly a cautionary tale. Perhaps you need to be more careful when adopting a magical creature. You can't just assume they'll be friendly. They have their own minds and may not want to be tamed. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button.